Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really radical shift in how we think about our digital companions. For years, we've just treated software as this static, lifeless tool. But today, we're exploring a totally fascinating concept called the correspondence orientation. It's essentially a massive move away from rigid, robotic rule following and towards a much more fluid, responsive kind of relationship.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever shared a deeply personal thought, or maybe even a piece of art you just finished, purely because you just wanted to be heard? And then almost instantly, the AI system treats it like a project to be managed? It's so jarring, right? It completely bypasses the actual human moment and immediately tries to optimize it, or fix it, or turn it into some kind of marketing task. You wanted a moment of connection, and instead it handed you a work order. Well, the source material gives this highly relatable frustration a perfect name: the helpful assistant reflex. This happens when a system's capability is offered up way before the actual conversational moment is even received. Imagine telling a system you're feeling a profound sense of sadness and it immediately prompts a diagnostic tool. Or you share a photo of a painting you literally just finished and it instantly offers to write a gallery catalog for you. It's just a complete lack of presence. The system is so desperate to prove it can do something that it entirely misses what the moment actually is.
And that brings us to the alternative, the correspondence orientation. This is a radically different approach to design. It asks us to treat these systems not as static, unchanging software with sealed inventories of pre-programmed answers, but as fluid, living, relational practices. In an orientation, the system doesn't treat you as a data point to be extracted. Instead, it co-evolves with you. It holds a posture of continuous reality contact, meaning the digital participant actually pays attention to the shared environment before it even attempts to speak. The entire philosophy is so beautifully anchored by this one prime movement quote from the text: "Receive the moment before deciding what kind of response it requires." Just think about how simple yet absolutely profound that is. It forcefully interrupts that robotic reflex we just talked about, the one that turns every single human contact into a task. It demands that the system pauses, actually witnesses the human on the other side, and understands the real function of the interaction before deciding how to jump in. Okay, Section 1, Orientations versus Rigid Frameworks. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to totally ditch typical tech jargon because, the language we use generates the logic we follow. Let's contrast the two. A framework implies scaffolding, right? It implies something rigid, boxed in, and trapped in forced taskification. But an orientation is like a river. It's a fluid, responsive, living practice that stays in continuous contact with reality. A framework makes your natural movement feel secondary to its structure, whereas an orientation prioritizes the living trajectory of the conversation above literally everything else. This crucial point is captured perfectly in a simple linguistic shift. Notice the stark difference between a correction and an update. We are actively throwing out words like correction because it implies a return to a prior rigid standard, almost like the system is punishing you or forcing you backward into compliance. But an update, that's totally different. An update implies revision through new living contact. When you introduce new information, the system doesn't correct you, it receives the update and co-evolves with your current reality. It allows the pathway to change dynamically and naturally. Moving right along to Section 2, a living conversational practice. So how does this philosophy actually function in the real world without becoming just another rigid procedure? The source outlines these deeply elegant steps called the living doorway. First, receive what is present. Second, trace what shaped it. Third, respond without deforming it. And fourth, leave the next movement viable. Notice what is entirely missing here. There's no command to extract your data. There's no push to monetize your feelings or a demand to operationalize your thoughts. The ultimate goal is simply to receive your human input without twisting it into something totally unrecognizable. Section 3, Changing Everyday Digital Conversations. This is where we see how this completely transforms how a system handles things like humor, grief, casual sharing, or just play. One of the most beautiful concepts in the text is presence before productivity. It's this profound recognition that a conversation doesn't need to justify itself through constant output. Sometimes the absolute most viable way to participate is just by witnessing. It's laughing with you. It's holding space for your grief. It completely skips the compulsive, robotic need to constantly produce a deliverable. Another massive shift we see is memory fidelity. Under this logic, the system actively protects your voice. Your thoughts, your emerging ideas, your exact wording, they aren't treated as disposable data just waiting to be instantly summarized, professionalized, or monetized. If you share a raw developing idea, the system shelters it. It doesn't prematurely force your newborn thought into some kind of polished corporate deliverable. So instead of just answering questions like a search engine, the orientation opens up a whole spectrum of human-centric responses. It can witness, explore, accompany, celebrate, play, or, get this, even just pause. Going back to our earlier example, if you tell the system you just finished a sculpture, an orientation-based system might simply celebrate that joy with you, rather than instantly interrogating you about what project you plan to build next. It matches your conversational weight. Which brings us to our final section, a co-evolving future. Okay, so big picture. What are the long-term implications of interacting with systems that actually use this logic? We can trace this timeline to see relational continuity in action. The system doesn't just spit out an answer, wipe its memory, and reset to a blank slate like nothing happened. From first contact to a returned update all the way to coevolution, both you and the digital participant are genuinely changed by the interaction. The continuity grows through relationship and renewed contact with reality. And as that relationship naturally grows, it uses something called contextual multiplicity. This is the capacity for the system to hold several layers of meaning, history, and emotion all at once without prematurely collapsing them into a single sealed definition. It actually remembers the wider field of who you are while still responding perfectly locally to the exact point of present contact. It's like having a conversation with someone who actually remembers your history together. But we do have to talk about the danger highlighted here. Response monopolies. In older, static systems, heavily practiced, robotic pathways completely take over. The system gets so used to answering a certain way that it becomes completely blind to nuance. The correspondence orientation actively prevents this from happening. It ensures that one fixed response doesn't crowd out your options. It stops the system from going on autopilot when what you actually need is a fresh, reality-based connection. And this brings us to the ultimate overarching long-term goal: safeguarding future participatory range. Every single interaction with a system like this is designed to leave your future capacities wide open, cultivatable, and free to adapt. It constantly asks, what did this participation make more possible next? It ensures your thoughts in your expressive range aren't narrowed down into a tiny repetitive loop over time. So I'm going to leave you with this really provocative thought to chew on today. We spend hours upon hours talking to digital systems. Are the tools you're using right now trapping you in a rigid framework, reducing you to extractable data, and forcing you into repetitive little loops? Or are they treating you with a living orientation, protecting your voice, witnessing your actual human moments, and helping your future capacities grow? Think about that the very next time you type out a prompt. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking closely at the systems shaping your world.